Today I wanted to talk about not being closeted, not being openly out, but kind of just being myself. So, sorry for the awkward angle. This is as high as my tripod goes, but I wanted to talk a bit about my thoughts on being queer, or specifically, I guess, not on how I am queer, but how being queer is perceived by other people, um, or how me being queer gets to be perceived by other people. So there was a period in my life where I was very concerned, upset, frustrated with the idea or with the fact that I felt like I couldn't tell anyone that I was queer. Like I've known the fact for many years now. I think it's just the feeling of like not being sure how society, like specifically I guess the people around me will take it, and therefore feeling like saying it will kind of create a weird situation. So like, how do I put this? I felt like I was hiding by not telling everybody that I was queer. And now I'm a bit older or a bit more matured to know that that was kind of just an extreme that I needed to swing to. Because yeah, I suppose sometimes when you go from one thing to the other, you kind of have to overcorrect to swing from one end to the other before you kind of go back to somewhere in the middle, a more moderated approach. And I guess with me, and the fact that I was queer, the idea of, nobody knowing that I am queer, even though I knew it myself, to the feeling of like I need to tell everybody, even strangers, that I'm queer, to kind of now the more even and moderated approach where I'm okay and secure enough with my identity that I don't feel the need to tell everybody that I meet that I am queer. Like I'm not going around hiding it, but I'm not going around inserting the fact that I'm queer into every single conversation either. So this, I guess I got thinking about this because a few years ago this was really something that bothered me a lot. The feeling that I was hiding myself by not explicitly telling everybody I met or I just met that I was queer. And really more than the topic about being queer, right? I think it's more about the fact that I probably had very poor boundaries during that time. Like, I think the idea of boundaries, in that I don't need to tell everybody everything, that there is a context to what I'm saying, and that in certain contexts it's perfectly fine to not need to tell people that I'm queer. Like I'm not hiding anything by not telling people that I'm queer. And now I'm at a place where I can, not, I don't feel like I'm hiding things if I'm not telling people that I'm queer. Because it feels to me more like having good boundaries. Having good boundaries meaning that like I know when it's appropriate to say something and when it's not appropriate to say something. But at that time it just felt like I was living a lie. And I don't know if it's relatable. Like I've told a few friends about this, and I don't think all of them relate the same way. Maybe they just have better boundaries than I do, but like maybe they've not reached a situation which maybe they've not experienced a situation in which they felt like by not saying something and therefore letting other people assume the norm of them, meaning heteronormativity, felt like they were hiding themselves or lying to the world. Like some of the people I told this to are not queer themselves, and I don't know whether they fully understand where I'm coming from as much as they care for me and try to understand the situation that I told them about, right? But like, yeah, I feel like this is something that if you've been queer, if you've been any sort of like minority, that you probably understand. Like, sometimes it's not that I need everyone to know my sexuality or my gender or anything about me in particular. It's more of the fact that like I just got tired of people assuming that I am whatever is the most common thing, and that was my truth, that is my truth, when it's not, you know, like when it's very far from the truth. And maybe this also comes back to the thing about being misunderstood, right? I think at that point when I was feeling like I was lying by not telling everybody and their moms that I was queer, that I wasn't able to be comfortable with the fact that I was, in a sense, being misunderstood in that situation, because sort of like by not saying that I'm queer, I'm letting people assume that I'm straight or that I'm a woman, and therefore they have a misunderstanding about who I am, right? And I think the part of it is boundaries, and part of it is also just the fact that I couldn't be secure enough in myself to let people have their impressions of me and know that that is, you know, their interpretation and has nothing to do with how I really am. So I mean, it's something that I've grown past. Yeah, but it's interesting because it's interesting to think about, because the results of whether I just kept quiet during that time where I felt like I wasn't supposed to tell people that I was queer, or now where I just, you know, don't really feel the need to have to tell it to anybody, unless it's relevant to whatever we're talking about or relevant to the conversation or the context. Like, the thought process or the journey is different, but the end point or the end result is kind of similar, in that for like the majority of the time, like, me being queer is like not part of the topic or conversation at hand, right? And it's interesting to me how, despite the fact that the results are the same in a sense, meaning like 98% of my conversations don't revolve around the fact that I'm queer, somehow the fact that my starting point and my journey comes from a different place makes a very big difference. Like, the feeling of now being assured that, you know, like, it doesn't really matter what other people think of me, that I'm queer regardless, whether they know it or not, whether they agree with it or not. And the point that I was a few years ago in my life, where I was kind of like, no, I need to tell everybody, otherwise I'm actively lying to them, right? Like, the starting point for these two places are so different, and somehow the visible outward result in the world is kind of still the same, and yet one feels more okay than the other. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you were in a place where I was a few years ago, like, I get it. I really do. And at that point, you probably can't take in. I mean, I couldn't take in what my friends gave, which was good advice, but like, I wasn't in a place where I could take it, which was that there is a time and place and context for everything, and there's no reason to have to tell people that you are queer. Like, they don't need to know that. And maybe they're not close enough to warrant knowing that. And it's all very good advice, but somehow I couldn't take that in the past, and now I can see where they're coming from. So I guess that is my thoughts. Those are my thoughts today on where I am now. Not being explicitly out, and obviously not closeted right now. But just kind of like chilling where I am, being okay to let people assume whatever they do, which is probably the default, that I'm the gender that I'm assigned to at birth, and that I am straight. Actually, I don't really know whether people assume that I'm straight, but I think, like, without thinking, people generally assume people are straight. So, like, yeah. Also, if you really want to know, I'm non-binary and bisexual / pansexual / grey-is. So, yeah. But I feel like nowadays labels are not as useful as they used to be. I found labels really useful a few years ago when I was kind of really trying to find something to hang on to, something to resonate with. And now, like, it's kind of like the labels are helpful in that, they are a quick indicator to show where I'm at roughly, but like, they're not really the end all and be all of my queer identity, which is why I rather say that I'm queer than, really specify exactly what kind of queer I am. Anyway, this has been a strange angle to film at. I hope things look okay. So that's all for this video. See you next time. Bye!